What's up, guys? Today I wanted to update my list on the best old Samsung flagships that you should buy in 2023, this late 2023 going into 2024. All right, so I think the best phone for most people, and I'll let you guys know like the phone that I would buy personally, but I think the best phone that I like to recommend to most people is the Note 20 Ultra. This is a fantastic phone. I get questions like, is this phone still getting security updates? It's going to get security updates for 3 years, guys. So you can easily use this phone for 3 years. I get a lot of questions about that. And we're going to talk about the security a little bit more. But this is a fantastic phone, and you could typically find these phones for around $350 on eBay, if not a little cheaper if you decide to bid on them. But you can get it in excellent condition for that cost. And this phone has still a really good design. It's a stainless steel frame. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. You do have the built-in stylus on here. And the reason why I like to recommend this phone is because a lot of people out there really want SD card support, and this phone does provide that. And it does a lot of other things really, really well. It also has a 6.9-inch display. It's 120 Hz HDR10 plus. 1440p 496 for the PPI, so it's a very big phone, so it's really good for watching content, Netflix, watching YouTube. It's got a massive beautiful display and very boxy as well too, so it almost looks like a little TV. Again, you can only run the 120 hertz at the 1080p, so just do note that. Now, this phone got its last major OS update with Android 13 One UI 5 and is getting security patches from that point on. The best thing about this phone is actually the Snapdragon 865 chip on here. It is an extremely fast chip. Still in 2023, you're able to play PUBG at 90 frames. It pretty much blows through anything in the Play Store when it comes to gaming, and performance is just super snappy on this phone. In addition to that, you do have SD card support. On the base, it's 128 gigs and 12 gigs of RAM. This phone also has stereo speakers on here, which sound pretty good. You've also got pretty much all the same additional features that you have on the newer S23, as far as the under display fingerprint sensor still being very fast, Samsung wireless desktop support, and basically all the same software features even with the S Pen. So you're not really missing out on anything feature wise. This phone still has very good cameras. It's got a 108 megapixel camera on here, 12 megapixel periscope telephoto that does 5 times optical, and then it has a 50 times hybrid zoom as well too, and it also shoots in 8K 24 with a 10 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 60. If you're outdoors, it's really hard to tell the difference between this and, like, let's say a S22 Ultra. It's still really close. Even to the S23 Ultra, it still takes great photos outdoors. Even in low light, it still will give you a pretty good shot. You have really good zooming quality on this phone as well. 5 times, 10 times, all look really good on this phone, and video quality still looks great. So the cameras, I think, for the average person, these are still taking some really great shots. And like I said, the 108 megapixel camera, if you turn that on, you get really well detailed shots if you like to zoom and crop into photos and stuff like that. This phone also has pretty decent battery, so this is a question that I get a lot. I buy majority of my phones refurbished or used, and this phone still will crank out 6 hours of screen on time pretty easily. It's got a 4500 milliamp hour battery, 25 watt wired charging, wireless charging. I actually have a battery drain test on this phone as well too. It's got reverse wireless charging on here. It's going to do a fantastic job when it comes to battery life. I think if you're a light user like myself, if you're more gaming heavy, you definitely are going to have to charge this thing for sure. But if you're a light user, I wouldn't worry about battery life. Now, the next phone is the Galaxy Note 10 Plus. This is a phone that I get quite a few questions about, and this is still an awesome device to pick up. But I get a lot of questions about, can I still buy this phone even if it's on its last year of security patches? Because this phone is on its last year of security patches. I would just put some antivirus software on here, and that's pretty much it. I like to use AVG, and I just put it on my older phones that don't have security patch, and I've never been hacked ever on any of my phones. But yeah, so this is a fantastic phone to buy, and still really, really good option because it's very cheap, and I know it's very affordable, especially for you guys overseas as well too. So you have the aluminum frame on here, IP68 dust and water resistant, has the built-in stylus, and I think one of Samsung's best designs, the Aura Glow color, is just really, really cool looking. Always a phone that I pull out and people just want to know what kind of phone it is. because it just looks really cool. It's got a massive 6.8-inch display. It's 1440p, 498 for the PPI. It's got the dynamic AMOLED HDR10 Plus. The screen on here was so futuristic. Now, this phone came out in 2019. It was so futuristic that watch my S23 Ultra comparison with this phone. The screens basically look identical from the front. It's really hard to tell the difference. The only thing that makes this phone screen a little bit dated is probably it's only 60 hertz. It's not 120 hertz or anything like that. But it's still a beautiful, beautiful panel. Like I said, basically identical to the newest phone, right? This phone has Android 12 with One UI 4. That was the last majorOS update. And like I said, it did get security patches this year. And the Snapdragon 855 chip on here is still very, very good. A lot of you guys would be surprised, but it still plays PUBG, HDR Extreme, 60 frames easily. You also have micro SD card support. And what's really cool about this phone is that you get 256 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM on the base model. So you get a lot of storage on this phone, just with the base. This phone has pretty good stereo speakers as well too. You essentially, still have all the same software features for right now. Under the display, fingerprint sensor is really good on here. Samsung desktop support, basically everything that you have on the S23. This phone also has pretty decent cameras. Like I said, it does a really good job outdoors, but in low light conditions, you can kind of see like where the phone's aging. It's got a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel telephoto, 2x optical, and then a 16 megapixel ultra wide 0.3 depth sensor. It shoots in 4K 60 with a 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 60. Like I said, the cameras are still really good if you're outdoors, just for a point and click. Video is also solid. Anything in lower light, you'll definitely see a softer, sort of grainier image for sure. Now, this phone does have a 4300 milliamp hour battery with pretty decent charging speed at 45 watts, 15 watt wireless charging and reverse wireless charging. So you still get a very good screen on time with this phone. Like I said, I have a battery drain tested with this one as well. And this one easily can get 6 hours of screen on a time as well too. Just do note, like with these older phones, if you game a lot, you're looking at like maybe 4 to 5 hours of screen on time. All right, so next is the Galaxy S21 Ultra. This is a phone that I would buy if I, had to pick a phone from this list. Like I said, the phone that I recommend to most people is the Note, but this is the phone that I would personally buy. There's a lot that I like about this phone. So one, you can find it in very good condition for around like $300. It's really, really cheap and excellent condition, probably like $350, $360. It's just an awesome looking phone. I just absolutely love the look of this phone. It's got the aluminum frame, it's got this really cool kind of Terminator look to it. I really love the camera cutout on here. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. And a lot of people forget this phone actually does have S Pen support. It's just not built in. But absolutely beautiful looking phone, I think. The best thing about this phone, and I get this from a lot of people, like, it's like the Note, like it's 6.9 inches. The reason why the phone is uncomfortable to hold because it's a boxier phone. This phone has a way better shape to it, and it's a big phone, but it's way easier to hold because, like me, I have smaller hands. You can hold this phone extremely easily, even though it's a really big phone. It's very comfortable to hold. 6.8-inch display, really beautiful panel, dynamic AMOLED, 120 hertz, HDR10 plus, very bright, 1500 nits peak brightness, full 1440p, 515 for the PPI. Like I said, it's a big, beautiful display. Like I said, very easy to manage and hold because of the overall design of the phone being a little bit curved. So this phone has Android 13, One UI 5.1. This phone will get Android 14 and 15 and security patches, so you can basically hold this phone for years and years. So once you buy it, you don't have to worry about anything like that. This phone has the Snapdragon AAA processor, which is still blazing fast. It still plays games fast. It still opens applications really fast. It's just a super, super fast phone. And like I said, check out the S23 Ultra comparison. I compared it to all these phones on the list, I think except the S21 Plus. But yeah, absolutely fantastic chip. It does get a little bit warm when it comes to like gaming for long periods of time, but I've never had anything like crash on me. This phone does have 128 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM. Stereo speakers are really good on here. The only downside is that there is no SD card support, so that's why a lot of people like the Note phone. The under the display fingerprint sensor is there, and then I think the best thing about this phone is that the cameras are still really good, and the zooming quality on this phone is still excellent. It's a 108 megapixel standard. It's got the periscope telephoto, 10 megapixel, does 10 times optical zoom, 10 megapixel telephoto that does 3 times optical zoom, and 12 megapixel ultra wide. And guys, the 30 times zoom shots look really good on here. 50 times, you can take 100 times. It is a really impressive zooming camera, so if you're at a concert or something like that, you'll be impressed what this type of phone can do. It's got 8K 24 video and a 40 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 60. Like I said, the overall cameras are still very good flagship quality cameras. Now, this phone also has pretty decent battery life. It's got a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, 25 watt charging, wireless and reverse wireless charging. Again, this phone I can get a little bit over 6 hours of screen on time, but overall this is a beast of a phone, especially at the price it is at now. Absolutely fantastic. All right, so next is the Galaxy S21 Plus. So basically you can think of this as the S21 Ultra without the crazy camera setup. But you can find this for significantly cheaper, around like 200 bucks. So it's got pretty much the same design. You got the cool camera cutout. You also have the matte finish, IP68 dust and water resistant, aluminum frame. It's a very nice feeling phone in the hand. And also, if you are overseas, the S21 FE might be cheaper, so you can also get that phone. I really like that one as well too. This one has the dynamic AMOLED display, 120 Hz, HDR10 plus. 1300 nits peak brightness at 6.7 inches, 1080p 394 for the PPI. You also have Android 13 on here. This phone will also get Android 14 as well. It's got the Snapdragon AAA processor on here. It's a very fast phone as well too. When gaming and performance wise, it will pretty much outperform anything in the $200 price point. Like say for instance, a Galaxy A14 or even an A54. This is just a much better option in my opinion. You also have 128 gigs of internal storage, 8 gigs of RAM on here. Stereo speakers are on board. They sound pretty good. Under the display fingerprint sensor. Samsung desktop support as well too is on here, and basically all the other software features except for the S Pen stuff. This phone also has very good cameras, a 12 megapixel standard, a 64 megapixel telephoto lens. It also has 1.1 optical zoom, 3 times hybrid zoom, 12 megapixel ultra wide. It also can shoot in 8K 24 with that 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 60. I absolutely love the cameras on here, really good dynamic range, great detail. It's just an overall great photo taker, and like I said, you get plenty of detail with these 64 megapixel camera on here. And battery life is surprisingly really good on this phone. It's a 4800 milliamp hour battery, 25 watt wired charging, wireless and reverse wireless charging, so you get pretty much all day battery life on this phone. So this is a phone that I absolutely love because it's so cheap and it's just much better than something like a Galaxy A54 or A14 or something like that. All right, next is the Galaxy S20 Ultra. This is another fantastic phone, and basically this is an alternative to anybody who says that the Note 20 Ultra is too big, because if it's too big, that means again like they don't like the way the big phones feel in the hand. It might be too boxy or something like that. This is a very comfortable phone to hold as well too, like the S21 Ultra. Very similar to that phone, but this phone does have SD card support, which if you need expandable storage, this is definitely a great buy. Aluminum frame, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant. Like I said, a very curved phone on the edges, so it just feels really great in the palm even though it's a big phone. It's a dynamic AMOLED display at 120 Hz, HDR10 plus, 1400 nits peak brightness. Like I said, massive display at 6.9 inches. 511 for the PPI. Like I said, it's a 1440p panel, but you can only run the 120 Hz at 1080p on this one. This last major OS update was Android 13 when you are 5.1, so this phone is in the same boat as the Note 20 Ultra with security patches. Snapdragon 865 on here. It's blazing fast. This phone also can run PUBG at 90 frames, and everything is just super fast with this phone performance wise. And like I said, it has micro SD card support, so if you need that expandable storage, 128 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM on board. It's got stereo speakers as well too, and basically all the same features as the newer phones. Under display fingerprint sensor, very fast. Samsung desktop support, same features besides the S Pen. stuff. And then this phone has the 108 megapixel standard camera on here. This was the first phone to have the 100 times zoom. It's got 48 megapixel periscope telephoto, 4 times optical and 10 times hybrid, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 0.3 depth sensor, shoots in 8K 24, 40 megapixel camera, shoots in 4K 60. You can still get really good 10 times and even 30 times shots on this phone. Very impressive zooming quality as well too. And overall, the images still look great in my opinion. Now, this phone also has pretty decent battery life. It's a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, 45 watt charging, wireless and reverse wireless charging. So basically, it's another phone that can get around 6 hours of screen on time pretty easily. So overall, these are my picks. Be sure to let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.